Welcome everyone. Today we are going to start the lecture of general anatomy and our topic is skeletal system. The objective of this lecture is to gain the knowledge about what is skeleton, what is the function of skeletal system is there, what is the structure of a bone and what is the classification of a bones are there based on its shape we are going to cover in this lecture. What do we understand by skeletal system? Basically, the skeleton comes from a Greek word meaning dried up body. So, as the bone appears dead and dried up, but it is not the actually dead. It is a living tissues. So, the number of bones in the newborn humans is around 350 and the number of bones decreases with age and it is going to reduce down to the in a normal human adult it will be reaching up to 206 bones. What are the parts of a skeletal system? The skeletal system is going to comprise of bones, joints, cartilage and ligaments. Basically, bones is the integral component of the skeletal system which is also known as skeleton. Basically, our human skeleton is comprised of bones itself. The junction between the two bones is known as joints. The cartilage are a kind of soft tissues which is going to form only that it is going to vary between the within the matrix of the structure of the skeletal system it is going to vary. And apart from that, ligaments, basically ligaments are the connective fibers which is going to attach the two bones together. If it is attaching the bones to bones, then it is known as ligaments. The connective fibers which is going to attach the bones to muscle, that is tendons. Next, we are going to cover about the functions of the skeletal system. So, the skeletal system has basic 5 functions. First is it is helping in the support, that is it is having the hard framework that supports and anchors the soft organs of the body. Second is it is going to provide the protection, that is it surrounds the organs such as brain and spinal cord, so that it is going to provide the protection of the brain and spinal cord along with the vital organs which is present in our central portion of the body. Third is it is going to provide the allows for the movement which is with in junction with the muscles that is getting attached to them, that is helping in the movement of the body, and the bones are acting as a levers for the movement. Fourth function is storage, that is the minerals and lipids are stored within the bony material. Fifth function is related to the blood cell formation. The bone marrow is the area which is regarded for the blood cell production is happening due to the presence of bone marrow in our body. What is the structure of a bone is there? So bone has typically 4 layers are there. First is periosteum, which is covering or it is the outer covering of the bone is there. Next is compact bone, which lies beneath the periosteum. After that, the third layer is the spongy bone, which lies beneath the compact bone. And fourth portion is the bone marrow, which fills the gap between the spongy bone and within the spongy bone itself. So the bone marrow is a kind of cavity is there where the red bone marrow or the yellow bone marrow can be stored. Further, next we are going to study about the classification of the bones based on the shape. Like how we are going to classify the bones on the basis of its shape. It can be divided into 4 categories. First is long bone, second is short bone, third is flat bone, fourth is irregular bone. The long bones are typically a type of long bones is they are having the length of the bone will be longer compared to the width of the bone. Further, the long bone can be divided into 2 regions, that it will contain 2 heads at both the ends along with the shaft which is forming the middle portion. Contain mostly the compact bone itself, like mostly the outer covering periosteum will be there. spongy bone will be, the outer covering will be covering the compact tissues of the bone itself. The examples of long bones are femur and humerus. So basically, next categories of bone is short bone. Basically, they are generally cubical in shape. So it will be having multiple sides compared to only the length and width might be there. So we cannot divide that, either it can be cube shape or the cuboidal shape might be there. It contains mostly the spongy bones, or the most of the examples of the spongy bone, or it will contain more amount of spongy tissues compared to the compact tissues. The examples of the short bones are carpals and tarsals. Next is the flat bones. They are basically the structure of the flat bones. It will be a thin and flattened in shape. Apart from that, it will usually be curved. There will be always the surface of the bones will be curved. Thin layers of compact bones will be found around a layer of spongy bone. So the structure of the flat bones will be that the spongy layers will be covered by a layer of compact bones. So the common example of flat bones are skull, ribs and sternum. Next category of bones is irregular bones. So basically the bones which is not falling in the above three categories of the long bone, short bone or the flat bones, they will come under the categories of irregular bones. As the name is suggesting, the shape of the bones should be irregular and it will not fit in the other bone classification categories like the long bone, short bone or flat bones. The example of these types of bones are vertebrae and hip. Next, we are going to study about the gross anatomy of a long bone. So how the long bone can be, if we are going to study about the structure of a long bone, it can be divided into two regions. First is diaphysis and the epiphysis. So epiphysis is basically representing the end of the bones and the diaphysis is representing the shaft of the bone. Mostly the diaphysis area is composed by the compact bone and the epiphyseal area will mostly composed of the spongy bones. Apart from that, the other areas, it will contain the periosteum, which is the outer covering of the diaphysis, or even in the area where the articulation are not taking places, there the periosteum will be covering. This is basically formed by the fibrous connective tissue membrane, or in other words, it is a fibrous connective tissue membrane which is helping in the protection of the bony tissues. Next is Sarpi's fibers. Basically the Sarpi's fibers are the fibers which is securing the periosteum to the underlying bone. It is even though periosteum is the outer membrane, they are connected to the bony tissues with the help of Sarpi's fibers. Apart from that, arteries are also present which is going to supply the bone cells with the nutrients. Next, at the end of the bones, it will contain the articular cartilage. The articular cartilage is going to cover the external surface of the epiphysis, which is mostly the articular cartilage is formed by the type of cartilage will be hyaline in nature. Basically the hyaline cartilage or the cartilage is going to decrease the friction at the joint surfaces. Next portion of the long bone is the medullary cavity. That is the cavity of the shaft or the hollow portion. Even though the bone are not completely intact, the hollow portion of the bone contains a cavity which is known as the medullary cavity, which contains the yellow marrow, basically mostly the fats in case of adults. In case of children or the infants, the medullary cavity is going to contain the red marrow for the red or the blood cells formation. What are the changes that might occur in the human skeleton? In the embryonic stage, the skeletal system is mainly composed or formed by primarily the hyaline cartilage is the main structural integrity which is going to provide the framework in the embryonic stage. During the development, much of this cartilage is replaced by the bones. Even though much of the cartilage are replaced by the bones. There, even after the birth, there are certain areas which are containing the cartilage on its own, or the skeletal component or the skeletal system is containing the cartilage in that particular regions. The regions are the bridge of the nose, parts of the ribs, and the joints, the ending of the bones in the joints, they are going to contain the cartilage for the proper growth and maintenance of the body. So these are the references. Basically the contents has been taken from the B.D. Chaurasia book, that is the Handbook of General Anatomy, Peter L. Williams and Roger Wardrick, Gray's Anatomy, T.S. Ranganathan, the textbook of Human Anatomy. Apart from that, certain pictures has been taken from the internet, and the rest contents has been done by me.